Hi, my name is Alina. Do you know how to lose everything in one day? This is my story about betrayal, about a terrible diagnosis, and how I managed to live on. After university, I was going to get married and live happily ever after, but things didn't go according to plan. So, at 23, I graduated from university. My boyfriend and I were going to get married and move to another country. I wanted to get a degree and build a career there. We had already completed all the documents and were going to go to the registry office the other day. My future husband and all his relatives treated me very well. They were always interested in how I was doing and were literally grateful that I was marrying their son. But sometimes I thought they looked at me with a kind of pity. Yes, I only now understand that even then, I should have been wary. Meanwhile, Eric and I were preparing the documents. And you probably know that to enter a foreign university, you need to pass an HIV test. I went to the center to get tested. I hate injections, but this time it went well. I was told that the results will be ready in a couple of days. I put a notification on my cell phone so I wouldn't forget and ran on with my business. A few days later, I returned to the center and took the queue. Eric sent me all sorts of memes so I wouldn't get bored. And then a nurse came up to me. "Hello, are you Alina?" she asked me. I was a little confused and said, "Yes, it's me." This woman invited me to a private office. We went in, and she closed the door and gave me a glass of water. What strange rituals they have here, I thought. Alina, now HIV is not such a terrible disease. People with this diagnosis live quietly and create families. She talked for a long time. I didn't really understand why I needed all this information. At one point, she was silent for a couple of minutes, and then she looked me in the eye and said, "Alina, you have HIV." What? What did you say? Is this a joke? If so, it's not funny. Don't worry, she said. It's not over yet. Then she said something else, but I wasn't listening. Everything was a blur. In an instant, all my plans, all my desires, and my future fell into the abyss and shattered into small pieces. I thought it was a bad dream. I don't even remember what happened next or how I got home. Eric met me and asked, "What's wrong with you, my love?" "I have HIV," I managed to say. "Oh no, did I infect you? I thought it would be all right," Eric replied. I was in such a stupor at that moment. I don't even know how to describe my feelings to you. I got really hysterical. "What did you just say? So you had HIV and you didn't even tell me about it? What a freak you are! Go away! I don't want to see you! Get out!" I shouted. I certainly didn't expect such a betrayal. Now I understand why his parents were so grateful and looked at me with pity. They knew I was infected even then. God, my whole world, all the people I loved were vile traitors. I didn't want to see them again. I started to have depression. I began to get drunk, didn't go to work, quarreled with all my friends, didn't communicate with my family, locked myself in an apartment, didn't eat anything, and thought only that my life was over. I have no idea how long I'd been sobbing on the floor like that, maybe a month, maybe more. I woke up sobbing when someone broke into my apartment. I barely got up, opened the door, and there was my mother. She was crying and screaming, asking what happened to me. Why am I missing? Why I don't answer my phone? I didn't know what to say to her. "Mom, I have HIV." You should have seen my mother's face. I probably looked the same when I was told about my diagnosis. "Is that all? I thought you were killed or kidnapped. Oh, you're my stupid fool," my mother said and hugged me tightly, and we cried together. You know this isn't the end, right? People live, work, and give birth to children with this diagnosis. In the 21st century, it's not so scary. Then she took me to a special center where people like me were diagnosed with HIV. There I met some talented guys. Artists, journalists, athletes, couples in love, all had HIV, but they were happy. These people said that their lives changed dramatically when they learned about the diagnosis. They also got depressed and did not know how to live on, but then realized that life goes on. They really inspired me back then. Now I have a job, I continued my studies as I wanted, and I have a boyfriend. I met him at the support center. Now we are helping other people with HIV. We explain that you can live with this diagnosis and be truly happy. If you meet a person with this disease, you should know that you are free to talk to them, eat from shared dishes, shake hands, and hug. Write in the comments whether you would be friends with such a person or build a relationship. I will be very happy to read any of your responses. And of course, like this video and share it with your friends. Maybe someone who needs support will hear my story.
Do you have a little brother or sister? How do you feel about them? Have you ever thought about what would happen if you were left alone without them? My name is Mark. I want to tell you about my sister, or rather, why I hated her. Usually when another child is born in the family, it is groomed and cherished the most. And all because he is small. He is the youngest in the family, and accordingly, he needs more attention than the others. For me, it turned out very differently. When I was born, I wasn't the best. I didn't have any privileges. I didn't get snickered at. I didn't get more toys, and I didn't get more pocket money than my sister. She was more loved than I was. I had the feeling that she was younger than I was, although the age difference is 5 years. My sister's name is Alice. No, she's a good person and sometimes a good sister. Sometimes when she was in a good mood, she would bring me home new toys, ice cream, or even give me money. But there were days when she looked awful and acted like a bitch. She could have thrown me out of the room and slammed the door in my face. I didn't understand why her parents didn't scold her at such times. Why did they punish me for any such outbursts? Was she on a special account? But why and how? I remember once I had a birthday, but my parents said that there was no money for the celebration, and I wanted this event so much. I waited a whole year to ask for a new skate as a gift. And then, such a bummer. Naturally, my mood fell. The next day passed as usual, and in the late afternoon, I noticed that my mother was packing a suitcase somewhere. When I asked where she was going, she said that she and Alice should go to another country, and then promised that they would return soon. What? Another country? But how? Why not me? Why her? Why does she always get the best of everything? So they don't have money for a new skate and cake, but they do have money to go to other countries? Why should I do all this? My heart was filled with hatred for Alice that night. I went to her bedroom, watched her pack her own things, and just silently hated her. I have often wondered why they should have another child if there is no place for it in their heart. This unloved, sometimes superfluous member of the family was me. As long as I can remember, I've been trying to figure out the secret of my sister's difference from me. And can everything be simpler? It's just that she's she and I'm I. This continued for several more years, and things got even worse. My parents almost stopped noticing me over the years. I was in the house like a shadow, and I had already learned not to talk to them much, and not to pay attention to the way they hung around this witch. I went to school, did my own homework, signed up for sports clubs, and made plans to get out of the house as soon as possible. Yes, I made a final decision for myself. They will be better off without me. Or rather, they will not even notice my absence. I just needed to find a place to live and some part-time work for minors. I waited for the day when my mom and dad left on some business. They promised to return late at night. I picked up my duffel bag from under the bed and headed for the exit. As I was walking down the hall, Alice noticed me. "Hey Mark, where are you going?" she asked me. I was rude when I said it was none of her business. "What difference does it make? Do you care?" I shouted back. Alice made a surprised face, came up to me and asked why I was angry and rude to her. This question enraged me even more. I realized that the silence accumulated over the past months was about to tear me apart, and I gave in to emotions and I told my favorite parents everything I thought about my family. You ask why I'm angry? Because I don't exist in your fucking family. You live your own life. Parents have recently ceased to be interested in how I'm doing. You sit down to dinner separately, separate from me. When I get home, no one even yells, "Mark, hi, how you doing?" And no one asks me how I'm doing at school. Do any of you know that I'm captain of the high school basketball team? Did you know that I've been going to a music club for a year now and I've learned to play the guitar? Yes, I learned to cook food myself with the help of Google. And all because you are not near me. You then with your father, then with your mother, travel around the world, go to some countries and do not even tell where you rested? And I wasn't even taken once. And then you ask why I'm angry? Maybe because I'm not your family, I shouted. I was yelling so hard that I thought my lungs were going to explode from the strain. I blushed and my eyes were streaming with tears. The resentment I had accumulated over the years spoke to me. Alice just stood there looking at me and crying. She just said, "I'm sorry," in a low voice. "Is that all? I'm sorry?" I asked her. She roared louder than me, slammed the door to the room, and cried. I didn't know what was going on. It turns out that my parents were standing behind me. They looked very depressed. Mom was crying too, and then she and Dad took me to the kitchen. My father said they had a serious conversation for me. I was prepared to hear that I was not their own child, that they had taken me for a fool, and now they were sorry and I had to leave. "Your sister has cancer," my mother said. She wept even louder. Dad put his arm around her, but he didn't look up from the floor. At that moment, I felt sick. I was prepared for anything but this news. Suddenly, I felt hurt, ashamed, and angry at the same time. "She was diagnosed with the disease a couple months before you were born, and your dad and I threw all our energy into her treatment. Alice was looking forward to your birth. When you were in my tummy, she read you her favorite stories every day. In the countries we went to, she received chemotherapy, after which she was very ill for a while. She sometimes couldn't even walk on her own, so she often kept the door to her room closed or maliciously kicked you out. She just forbade us to tell you about it because she wanted you not to be sad," my mother said. Then she pointed out that she was very sorry for me because when they saved one child, they did not notice how they destroyed another, me. I don't think I felt any worse. You can't imagine how bad I felt at that moment. I thought of such terrible things. I hated Alice, and I did everything I could to offend her. I just looked at my parents and cried. My sister came up behind me and gave me a big hug. I couldn't say a word. She calmed me down and said it was all her own fault. "I still love you, you stupid boy," she said, and laughed. That night, for the first time in my life, I had such a long, open, honest, and frank conversation. All I asked was that you let me take care of her. Now, in all her chemo sessions, I was there for her, feeding her, reading her books, playing the guitar, singing songs. A few more years passed. Alice still has to undergo intensive treatment, but I'm happier than ever because I can be near my sister, whom I love more than anyone in the world.